Mark Kellogg's shocking account of Custer's last stand. For days before fate closed in on George Armstrong Custer and his men, a newspaper correspondent by the name of Mark Kellogg put pen to paper. He didn't know it then, but this would be one of the last things he'd ever write. Kellogg had joined Custer's column on what was supposed to be a swift, decisive campaign against the Sioux and Cheyenne in the summer of 1876. Like many at the time, he believed in the mission, trusted the officers, and assumed that the Army's power would carry the day. But as the dust settled on the Montana plains near the Little Bighorn, it became clear that something had gone terribly wrong. Kellogg's final report wasn't a dramatic account of battle, gunfire, or glory. Instead, it was a calm recounting of movement and preparation, routine in tone, but now haunting in retrospect. It captured the quiet before the storm. From the 12th of June through the 19th, General Terry's command busied itself with setting the stage for the coming campaign. They established a supply depot near the mouth of the Powder River and used the steamboat Far West as a floating base of operations. That boat, stocked with 30 days' worth of food and feed, would shadow the troops up the Yellowstone River. The Far West carried headquarters upriver to the mouth of the Tongue, while Custer's cavalry, moving overland, made their way across 40 miles of tough terrain to meet up. The country they crossed wasn't much to look at, dry, low-lying, and hard on the feet of both man and beast. It was the kind of land where only sagebrush and cactus managed to hold their ground. On June 15, the column passed through an old Indian campsite, long abandoned. Judging by the remains, it had once housed over 1,000 lodges, stretching nearly 2 miles in length. Ghosts of a vast, mobile village lingered in the trampled soil and weathered lodge rings. No one was there now, just silence and dust. Wildlife was scarce. Custer, however, showed off his aim by dropping an antelope from 400 yards and nearly taking the heads off some unlucky sage hens. But no buffalo were seen. That absence alone said something, perhaps more than anyone understood at the time. Kellogg had an eye for the landscape. He described the Yellowstone River not just as a path of water, but as a living presence. Its current, restless and fast, spoke with a soft hiss like wind threading its way through tall grass. The water, tinted the color of clay, was cool and good to drink. Compared to the Missouri, the Yellowstone here was wider and better suited for steamboat travel, a valuable detail in those days. The Tongue River, by contrast, ran faster and darker, stained with a reddish hue. Not much for drinking, but it served its purpose. By the 19th, Custer had pushed forward with 6 companies of cavalry, fording the Tongue River about 3 miles from where it met the Yellowstone. He moved quickly to a spot roughly 9 miles from Major Reno's camp. Reno had just returned from a scouting mission, though not all went according to plan. For reasons Kellogg couldn't explain, Reno had strayed from General Terry's orders, possibly overstepping or outright ignoring them. In the unfolding saga of the 1876 Northern Plains Campaign, Major Marcus Albert Reno of the 7th Cavalry was entrusted with a crucial reconnaissance mission, one that would ripple through the larger tapestry of this fateful summer's engagements. Tasked with leading 6 companies of his regiment, what was effectively the right wing of the 7th Cavalry, alongside a single Gatling gun from the mounted battery, Reno was ordered to set out at the earliest opportunity to scout the Powder River region. His directive was to start from the camp's current position and press forward to the mouth of the Little Powder River. From there, Reno's path would take him across to the headwaters of Mizpah Creek, down its winding course to where it merged with the Powder, then cross Pumpkin Creek and the Tongue River, finally descending the Tongue to its confluence with the Yellowstone River. It was at this juncture that Reno was expected to link up with the remaining companies of the 7th Cavalry and meet the supply train carrying provisions and forage. The planning was thorough. Major Reno's unit was provisioned with enough food to last 12 days, along with sufficient forage to feed the animals, calculated carefully at 2 pounds of grain per day for each horse or mule in the command. This was a considerable logistical undertaking, reflecting the military's awareness that the vast, rugged terrain of the northern plains demanded careful preparation. A crucial element of Reno's contingent was the inclusion of Indian scouts, selected by Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer himself. Among them was Mich Bouye, a man whose knowledge of the land and native tactics was invaluable, accompanied by 8 other experienced scouts. Together, this small but sharp-eyed team was meant to guide Reno's column safely through unknown country. Also attached was Acting Assistant Surgeon H.R. Porter, ensuring medical support was close at hand. These arrangements were all made under the orders of Brigadier General Alfred Terry, the expedition's commanding officer. Yet, despite the solid groundwork, Reno's expedition ran into a significant setback. Instead of adhering to the original plan, moving south along the Tongue River Valley and then rejoining the main force, Major Reno struck off in a due south direction from the Powder River Forks, heading toward the Rosebud River. There, his men encountered a fresh trail of hostile native warriors, signaling the proximity of the main Indian forces. This detour proved critical. General Terry's grand strategy was to have Reno return along the Tongue River Valley, where after linking up with the rest of the regiment, Custer would lead a scouting force further up the Tongue. Custer's orders were to cross over to the Rosebud River near its headwaters, then pursue the hostile forces down the Rosebud Valley. Meanwhile, Terry himself planned to transport troops by steamer to the mouth of the Rosebud, where he would join forces with General Gibbon, who was marching up the valley from another direction. The goal was to envelop the native forces, approximately 1,500 strong, in a coordinated pincer movement that would trap them with little chance of escape. Had Reno maintained the original route, this strategy might have succeeded, bringing the campaign to a decisive and swift conclusion. Instead, Reno's premature southward move scattered the efforts and gave the native warriors the chance to evade capture, forcing a new phase of the campaign. As of June 22, General Custer was ordered with 12 cavalry companies to scout from the Rosebud's mouth upstream to the fresh trail Reno had discovered, tasked with pursuing it swiftly. Intelligence had confirmed that the native forces were not in rapid retreat but were instead engaged in buffalo hunting, moving slowly in short daily marches, an advantage the cavalry hoped to exploit. Meanwhile, General Terry advanced by steamer to the mouth of the Bighorn River, intending to scout Pumpkin Creek en route, accompanied by General Gibbon's cavalry and infantry units. These forces were moving along the Yellowstone's northern side to intercept any possible escape routes the native warriors might attempt down the Bighorn Valley. This multi-pronged operation reflected a sophisticated understanding of terrain and enemy movements. Custer's march from the Tongue to the Rosebud covered some of the harshest and most forbidding terrain imaginable. The Moveza's Terrace, or Badlands, infamous for their jagged ridges, steep canyons, and maze-like gullies. The landscape was a relentless test of endurance, narrow defile, deep canyons where sunlight barely penetrated, creating sweltering pockets of still air that sapped the strength of the men and horses alike. Yet despite the brutal conditions, the cavalry's swift pace kept them neck and neck with the steamer navigating the Yellowstone River. The sight of General Custer himself was a steady morale booster. Clad in distinctive light buckskin, he could often be seen at the head of the column, cresting the heights above the twisting river valleys, always pushing forward with an urgency that underscored the high stakes of the campaign. As the expedition progressed farther up the Yellowstone Valley, the stark beauty of the land came into clearer focus. The river valley grew richer and more abundant, the grasses taller, the trees thicker, and the small islands dotting the river adorned with lush foliage that stretched their branches over the swift, golden waters. The Yellowstone's banks rose steeply, its channel remained consistent, and the riverbed of gravel provided enough depth to support shallow-draft steamers for nearly 500 miles from the Missouri River confluence up to the Bighorn's mouth. This was a land on the cusp of transformation. What appeared on maps as a modest creek was in reality a major artery for future commerce and settlement, a valley vastly larger and more fertile than those familiar to settlers back east. The upper Yellowstone Valley, in particular, offered prime conditions: rich soil, abundant game, plentiful fish, excellent grass for grazing, and a favorable climate. It was this bounty that would eventually draw settlers westward, though for now it remained the domain of native tribes and the U.S. military's determined but cautious advance. Brigadier General Alfred Terry, commanding the entire expedition, proved himself the embodiment of what a military leader should be in such a complex campaign. A man of clear intellect, cool judgment, and steady resolve, Terry's leadership inspired confidence. His broad vision and pragmatic planning set the tone for the operation, and his officers respected him deeply. His demeanor was approachable but firm, and his ability to keep the sprawling expedition coordinated under trying circumstances was impressive. Equally important was the quality of the men serving under him. The officers and soldiers of the 7th Cavalry, alongside infantry units from the 2nd, 6th, 17th, and 20th regiments, were a hardy and experienced group, drawn from the best of the U.S. Army's frontier forces. Courage and dedication were abundant among them. Among the most notable figures was Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer, a man whose reputation was as vivid and controversial as the frontier itself. A striking character, quick-witted, fiercely determined, tireless in pursuit, and commanding fierce loyalty, Custer was as much a force of nature as a soldier. His energy and ambition knew no bounds, and his followers trusted him implicitly, willing to follow him into the fiercest dangers. Observing him in action revealed a complex man, brilliant, restless, and utterly committed to his vision of duty and honor. The scouts, including Mitch Bouillet, brought indispensable knowledge and insight into the terrain and native tactics. Their guidance was critical in navigating a landscape and conflict far removed from conventional warfare. Meanwhile, General Gibbon's contingent had departed Fort Ellis, Montana, on April 1, moving toward their assigned rendezvous along the Yellowstone. Their progress was hampered by the swollen, swift currents of the river, which prevented crossing and forced them to hold position near the Rosebud's mouth. During this time, the camp endured constant harassment from hostile native warriors stationed on the opposite bluffs, swift, daring raids marked by war whoops, mockery, and sudden disappearances on horseback. Though these encounters were unsettling, they were largely tactical provocations, as the dangerous river crossing was impossible without risking lives. This overall narrative captures the tense moments before the historic clash at the Little Bighorn, where strategic decisions, terrain challenges, and the resolute will of both soldiers and native warriors would collide with tragic consequences. It is a story of rugged landscapes, relentless pursuit, and the harsh realities of warfare on the American frontier, one that deserves to be remembered with clear eyes and thoughtful respect.